Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. With me in the studio on my immediate right is Kaberia Bariu. Entrepreneur, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Much appreciated. Rotich David is the president, the Moot Court Committee, Mount Kenya University. Thank you for your time.
I'm glad to be here.
Much appreciated. Honorable Umi Harun is a nominated member of Parliament. Thanks for your time as well. Appreciated. Jane Kariuki is the chair, the Ethical Leadership Network Governance Committee. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Angel Mbudia is the Youth League Chairperson of the Jubilee Party. Thanks for your time. And Kamau Wambio is the Kiambu County Youth Caucus. Thanks for a member of the Kiambu County Youth Caucus. Thanks for your time as well. Well, a lot has been happening in the country. First of all, let's begin before we delve down into the aspect of time, gender and equity to a very pertinent point, I'm sure, and this is also an area of interest for a majority of you. And there was a question on the traveling by the president, making trips across the country. Some of his supporters and government officials justifying that as having brought into the country investment opportunities and also the prospects of increasing the foreign direct investment. By yesterday, the head of state had cut his travel budget by 500 million Kenya shillings. That is about $500 million. And this after a special report done by this paper, The Standard, yesterday. And according to the Controller of Budget, ladies and gentlemen, so far the president has spent 1.36 billion Kenya shillings on travels. That is domestic. Majorly, that is 1 billion, and foreign, about 361. I first begin with you, Angel. What do you make of this entire, debate about his travel? He has to because he is the president. But what's your thinking from a young person's perspective as to him now cutting down that expenditure by $500 million?
Well, largely, I think as a first-time president, what Mr. Ruto is looking to do is, of course, define his foreign policy as a president, although that doesn't entirely justify his expenditure, because there's a lot going on in government in terms of cutting budgets. What now he's doing, other members in government, civil servants have been asked not to travel outside the country because of the expenditure that's going on here and there. But then again, it doesn't qualify how much he's spending going out of the country. 1.3 billion is a fifth of the school feeding program that you just talked about moments ago. So I think there are a lot of misplaced priorities, because that's a very intangible progression he has taken, saying that he's justifying that there is more foreign investment into the country. That might not be seen now. That might be very difficult for Wanjiko to understand, because that should translate into a lower cost of living. That should translate into affordable education. That should translate into affordable healthcare. There are no strategies to even put such strategies in place, given that he's been going out of the country. Okay. And even farmers are not realizing the benefits of that, because these are the key sectors that should be able to feel the impact of his travel. Because if it's investment, if it is infrastructure, if it's technology, we are still paying a lot more for our data and so on and so forth. We are not seeing the expansion that he's really talking about. We are not seeing the value of the 1.3 billion that he's talking about. Okay.
Kariuki, what's your account of this entire debate about his travels? The government officials justifying the cause. Lately, he was in Saudi Arabia, the latest, and he's set to receive the king for the first time, who will be out of Europe and to a Commonwealth country. The opposition saying it's unnecessary. Where is the bridging question about those who oppose and those who support his travels?
I think there is need for a balance. It's good for him to travel and to make those connections, but I don't think he should travel too much. It is important for him to stay around and monitor his officials, the ministers, their ministries. How are they doing? Because I don't think the solutions to our problems will come from outside. We have to have homegrown solutions. For example, we need to work on agriculture to feed the nation, to build the economy. So I think he should spend more of his energy inside Kenya and to see how can we exploit the potential that we have as a country. And I am reminded of a country like China. For them to be where they are today, they had to focus inside first. And China has not been built by outsiders. It has been built by the Chinese people. So even Kenya will not be built by outsiders. It will be built by Kenyans. So I feel he needs to really put a lot of time and effort on Kenyan issues and to stay around. That is leadership by physical availability. But I wonder when he is out there and things are falling apart,
all right,
who is checking?
So there should be a cause for domestic focus. Omi, from your perspective as an opposition MP, I mean, how do you view this from Parliament precincts as a young Kenyan, of course, who falls within the bracket of the youth bracket, and also the opposition critiquing the president's many travels, 38 so far in more than 1 year?
I mean, I think from where I sit, when I look at that budget, I see a dam somewhere in my region, for example, because it's a lot of money to spend on trips when there are no immediate outcome results. And I think the fact that there's almost a consensus to slash down highlights that there was no need for the travels in the first place. Because some of these things, when you're a president, for example, there's a reason why you have cabinet ministers. These are people who can take up some of the mandates without necessarily going out of the way to be in every meeting, for example. I was seeing one of the visits in China, and I think the president was experimenting on a digital board, which is good, but those are technologies that could come to us, not necessarily Kenya going to China to see all these things. It's a digital world where everything can be done online, discussions can be held, and by the time such partnerships are reached, then a lot of procedures have already happened online. So I think those are priorities that are very, very much misplaced. And there's definitely room for improvement. And I think now there's some sort of sense coming in when budgets like that are slashed. And it's not even, a discussion that should be there in the first place. Okay. It's not as if there's a huge favor that has been done in this particular sense for a government that's really struggling to put everything in place and, really holding by the tight ropes. We all run households, and when you're running on an income of 50,000 and you want to make a trip of 30,000 every month, it doesn't make sense.
Okay. Kaberia?
Okay, thank you so much. And for me, I'm looking at it from the business perspective. And when you look at various strategies which need to come up for us to be able to grow economically, one of them is the bilateral and the multilateral, arrangement and agreement. So to me, if the travel means that it will be able to woo investors and be able at least to be able to talk to them to be able to invest back in Kenya by first even providing an enabling environment, first insight, then I think that it's very justified. But again, looking at the many, foreign travels by the president and maybe the office, sometimes I may not say, I can say that we don't directly see the benefits because there is not that much commitment even from the legislative capacity, from the policy perspective, and even on the adherence of the plans which they make. So if the president is able to commit and to be able to put a plan and a strategy on those, then I believe that we'll be able to reap a lot of benefits, especially at this time when Kenya is placing itself as a commercial hub, maybe to be able to, to shape its things like the coffee sector, which is really undergoing some reforms, and the tea sector. So if that is done internally very well, and then there's a good market and, the structures put aside, then we'll be able to see a lot of benefits. Yeah.
Rotish, you're pointing on all this happening within a spectrum of concerns over the high cost of living, the cost of corruption in the country, and also whether the foreign direct investments that comes in normally has the commensurate effect of job creation and economic growth.
Thank you, Ayub. I think the current situation that we are witnessing in Kenya takes us back to try and contrast the former presidents and His Excellency Dr. Ruto. And you will appreciate the fact that when Kibaki became the president, he tried as much as possible to lean towards the West. And when Uhuru came, he was very quick to show that he had a leaning towards China, Asia to be specific. But what Ruto is currently doing is a sort of sampling from the East, maybe trying what the West has to offer, maybe looking into what the Middle East now, as Ahmed Nasir, Abdullahi Senior Council, advised him, that he should consider even looking at the Middle East and assuming the East and the West. So it's very important for him to develop a foreign policy for the state. But now that should not be done while turning a blind eye to the situation in Kenya. And him being so quick to slash his foreign trips budget after it was highlighted in the media shows that he appreciates and he notes that it was a misplaced priority. But this was something which should have been done well behind, well before this time, not after we complained as the citizenry through the media, so that now he appreciates the situation. So he knows he's misplacing the priorities, and I think he should be so quick to stabilize his foreign policy so as to limit the unnecessary foreign trips.
Okay. Yes, Kamau.
I think it's a question of priorities. Ayub, we just came from an election. Before the election was COVID. Now there's a new government. What are you doing? When you get married, when you just get into that marriage, the first month, the first 6 months, you don't start making trips. You don't start taking your wife up and down. It's time to sit down, have a foundation for your family. You build a foundation on how you'll bring your family up. With the Mr. President, His Excellency Dr. Ruto, I think he's having so many misplaced priorities. I think he doesn't have the idea of what needs to be done. Okay. Because out of COVID and then the election is the new government, we have to save as much as we can. Number two, you have to know your ministries. You have to know who is who, who does this, what does this. We have so many places in Kiambu, in Deya, where we don't have lights to date. You get? We have places in Nashu, in Kikuyu, where there are no roads. You get? You have to sit down, have a strategy. Know what is going where, know what is going. I was seeing him relaunch projects that were done by the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta. Misplaced priorities. You first of all have a strategy of where money is, of what you will do with this money, what you will do with that money, instead of squandering the money outside, just travel trips, and you are not seeing the results. Yes. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, when we get back from the break, that was on taking your account on just a review of the front pages of the publications. Majorly what's standing out is the president's slash of $500 million from his travel budget, following a highlight by the media on making 38 trips in just over a year, slightly over a year since coming to office, and concerns that were raised as to whether there is the commensurate effect of foreign direct investments coming into the country in terms of job creation and economic growth. And when we get back from the break, we'll be now taking a look at time, gender, equity, the question of course, insecurity facing young people in the country, concerns over falling into the trap under the forceful abductions that normally do happen, and a large percentage of that made up by young people in the country. And your concerns will be, of course, taken here on the account of your perspectives. The hashtag on X's Daybreak, the SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. We'll proceed with that discussion after the break here on the broadcast. Stay tuned.